All right. Okay, that's fine. There should have been a recording already going unless you stopped it, Mark, because that's how I set the meeting up. But if
Oh,
not.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I stopped it when I logged on, so I restarted it just now.
Okay, so are you recording locally on your computer or in the cloud?
I am. I'm recording locally on my computer.
Okay, because I will, that's fine, except I will, I usually trim the crappy part at the end and the crappy part at the end off the video before we post it. So all the chit chat is gone, but.
Okay, I try to stop recording before the chit chat starts, but.
Okay, all right, well, anyway, so we'll get started here, that's fine.
Okay.
Stop chit chat and we won't have anything on the meeting.
Yeah. All right, so I guess we'll wait for Mark to step back.
I'm just a friend of the internet or IT support observer. So.
Okay. All right. So looks like there's no privilege of the floor then. All right. So we will move on. So there's an annual requirement for taking part in a training program against sexual harassment in the workplace. And I think you have all already seen announcements about that. The town, Mark, you can fill in. So you guys are going to do that sort of live there at the office when they do their July 20th one?
Yeah, I think our thinking was to do one right where we are here that day, if anybody wants to come here.
Okay, and
yeah.
Alternatively, it is possible to do it at one's own convenience with the link that was in the more recent town email. Do you get a certificate? I mean, because that was one thing. I think you're supposed to get some sort of certificate that one has completed the training. How do you do that, Mark? Do you know if you're doing the training, again, on your own at some other time?
I did it last. I don't remember. It's really. I think you just. I think you make, I don't remember, Bill. I think it leads you to it at the end of the tutorial about how to do that.
Okay.
So I'll see if I can find out, but it's pretty straightforward. It may even be that you can just, print a form and sign off that you've done it and scan and send that to Velvet. So.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that information will be forthcoming. All right. Oh, I didn't get my stuff going. Sorry, and all that chit chat at the beginning, I forgot. So I do have just a few slides I want to show from the
one question.
One of the reason. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Since I'm a new member, is there an email that was sent out before with a link to that, or is that still going to come later?
Right. That was on the town listserv. So, by the way, so Will, do you know Patrick? Have you met him at some other virtual meeting or anything?
We met in person on Tuesday.
We've had a conversation.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Yeah. So
Very nice. Very
great.
nice to meet you.
So yeah. So I guess, Patrick, I'm officially welcoming you to the planning board since you were, the town board voted on that last night.
Thank you.
But I figured everyone already knew about that, so I didn't bother to mention it already. But yeah, it's great to have you on board, and thank you for what I hope will be a good set of help as we move forward on projects for the planning board and zoning in the town. So
my pleasure to be here.
Great. Okay, so yeah, I need to launch something and then I can share my screen. So give me 1 second to do some electronic details. Let's see now. Okay, let me just rotate this. Okay. All right, let me get back to you guys. All right, so let me just pull up the first slide. Let's see, share screen. Okay. All right, is that working for you guys? You guys can see a slide saying introduction to BESS decommissioning.
Yes.
Okay, all right. And I don't know how it works for you guys in the office. I know there's a big TV screen. Hopefully it's big enough you can read this. I'm not running full screen mode on it, but let's see how it goes. Just a couple notes first before I get into the several slides here. Where was that? There it is. One thing I picked up in because in this, and it's reflected now in our law, I did not realize, and Will speaks to a question you brought up at the last planning board meeting. So in terms of regulatory picture, when a battery energy storage system is co-located with a large scale renewable energy generator, then the permitting is done through the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. The state supersedes local authority. So because we had that question of hybrid facilities. Now, I don't know, I didn't look into what large scale renewable energy generator really is defined as, because if there's a few kilowatts of power generated, they're probably not going to trigger that. But at some point, the state will supersede our regulatory authority if the battery system is co-located with a generator. Any other battery storage system, regardless of size, is permitted at the local level. So I've changed the wording of our local law to sort of reflect that, and we'll get to that when we look at the local law. So that was something I hadn't realized before. Okay, so as far as this goes, decommissioning is a whole process, and they're the first 4 steps there. What is decommissioning? And I think that we've sort of talked about this some in the past, but it is the whole getting it out of service, but also removing all the components and their ultimate disposal, which could be reuse or recycling. And then the site, something has to happen to the site. And we went through that with the solar law. And so the same sort of set of stuff for the battery law. And I think that we have this fully well covered. So I didn't pick up anything new. No surprise, because our law is based both on a lot of thorough work we did for the solar stuff, but also the model law put up by NYSERDA. So we cover a lot of the same ground. And then, they raised these sort of key questions.
Can I,
Go ahead.
when you have a minute, okay. So in the conditioning a little bit differently, I just want to mention it so we can keep it in mind. If there's an event that results in having to take some of the batteries out of service, they require a decommissioning and recommissioning, which we hadn't considered for solar or for batteries up to now.
So you're saying that is already in the uniform code? Because you broke up a little bit, so I didn't fully get everything you said.
Yes, it's in the code, but it's not, might not be fully defined. And because of the terminology, our terminology might be confusing.
Okay, so when we get to that section, I think we do have a little bit of language to that effect, but yeah, maybe we need to firm that up. Okay, good point. Yeah, and they just said you're in terms of decommissioning, these are the sort of things you got to worry about. As you say, a damaged versus an undamaged system. Like, some of the batteries go awry, and then what's going on at that point. All right, and let's see, let's go down. So there were various parts of decommissioning that they had in their model law, and we did incorporate these. That is a requirement that there be a decommissioning plan, that there be a fund for money, set aside at the upfront to do the decommissioning. What happens under ownership changes, that you have to have continuity so that the new owner is taking on the same decommissioning responsibilities. And something about the time frame of abandonment and how long the facility is permitted for. And again, no surprise, these are covered in our law, because again, we picked up on that both from what we had done in the solar work and also from working on the model law. But again, as we go through the law, we'll take a look. But yeah, we definitely require a plan. We definitely have a setup for the fund, as well as a recalculation of that money periodically to make sure it's still enough money. We definitely have an ownership changes section. and what constitutes an abandonment. We have all that. So I think we're in pretty good shape, is sort of what I gleaned from that webinar. And these questions, are good questions that we sort of grappled with, and I really don't know. And we don't have, I think we sort of have language of, the review board can make a determination of whether things could be left at the either upfront or at the end of the time. But, sometimes a facility is a bunch of containers, boxes that sit on the ground, and decommissioning is removing those, container crates that have all the batteries in them. And that's easy. But a lot of other times the racking is inside a building, and then you've got a foundation. And so then what happens? When the project is done, there's a building there. Does the town, it's usually, of course, on land leased by a landowner. Does the landowner take that building over? Is the building repurposed for something? If it's not going to be, then how much can you tear the building down but leave the foundation? So those are key questions of because these facilities are substantial hunks of material when they're not just a bunch of containers sitting on the ground. And so, whether the collecting lines are removed. I think we do call for that. We should double check that in the law. Certainly it talks about the removal of everything above the ground and the restoration of the site to pre-conditions. And then we do have a frequency of, at least for the study, of how much it's going to cost. I think it's like every 3 years or so. So, those are some of the things I took away from that that one webinar. And again, I feel like we're in fairly good shape. Any questions or comments generated by this?
I have a question, and I'll preface this by saying that since I've just joined the board, I haven't gotten a chance to read through the battery storage law draft yet. But in terms of what the town's considering about, say, removal of all above ground facilities and equipment, is the current conversation that would be required, or are there cases where battery storage wouldn't be a polluting activity and those buildings could be adaptively reused?
So my recollection, it's been 6 weeks since I probably read that section of the law, was, and Will, you can help me and Catherine, that we are requiring it, though it was the review board who in the town of Caroline, the projects are reviewed by our review board, not us, the planning board, can, on basically a case-by-case basis, allow certain structures to remain, essentially with the permission of the landowner. And the idea was that, you don't want to unnecessarily, you don't want to make things worse by necessarily removing everything. Like if someone actually wants the building, like it can be made good use of, that might be a better thing if it's not polluted than going through the energy, and both physical and literally energy of tearing something up. So I think we've tried to put some flexibility into the law. Will or Catherine, you want to add anything to that?
I think my impression has been, especially after like talking to the fire chief and things, that there's a lot of unknowns, right? So we're being very proactive, I think, which is a good thing. And there is no precedent really. So we're just trying to do the best with the information that we have. But at the end of the day, really, we don't know how this would function in a town such as ours.
Yeah, I'm here to fill in, Patrick.
My recollection is we were thinking case by case basis, with a proposal during the permitting process, but revisiting, allowing the review board to revisit what should be left and what should be removed because of the possibility of how much change could have happened during the life of the project.
Yeah, I think that's accurate and a good summary. So Patrick, as you know, we don't have zoning, and so actually we don't actually have permits per se. What we have is site plan reviews. So the review board reviews a site plan and approves the site plan, which is different than either giving a permit or under zoning a special use permit or something. So the language is a little weird, but it will hopefully get all ironed out in the near future. Yeah, I think that's probably all I'll say there. Oh, so I was going to say, so what Catherine reminded me of is we had this conversation with the fire chiefs at our last meeting. And, you know, I mean, whether a rural community with volunteer fire departments could really handle if there were a major battery energy storage system in place that then had a catastrophic fire, it would totally overwhelm the resources of the local firefighters.
And no water.
Pardon?
And no water.
Yeah, and no water.
Yeah.
So one of the requirements we've had actually is that there has to be enough water or other whatever on site, but usually it's water, to at least do the initial firefighting, because there isn't, you know, we don't have fire hydrants, right? We don't necessarily have water nearby to fight the fire. And the chief stressed that just taking those journeys to a pond to fill up is time consuming, but also it's not always possible. You know, there's a paucity of ponds that people are given permission for them to withdraw water from. And that's a chronic issue in the town, and declining enrollment in the volunteer fire services. So all of this makes us very, you know, leery, you know, somewhat scared of, if there were a problem, this could be a serious problem. So it's really a county-wide effort to fight the fire is what we really heard from them. But that's not really the law's jurisdiction, but it really has to be the county has to understand how they're going to cooperate all the different departments to fight something like this. If there were a problem. Okay, so then there were two main presenters. This is something we went through, and one of them was a guy who does the sort of cost estimates of decommissioning. So we talked about what they do. And then there was the other guy was someone that actually is in the business of recycling lithium ion batteries. And so he went through what they did. And, you know, so not much, you know, of import to the law other than, yeah, they're making improvements on recycling stuff. And he said his company, who is opening up a plant in Rochester, can currently recover up to, I think it says 95% of all the lithium ion battery materials. And they basically then pump out a bunch of metals that are then turned back into batteries. So that's what their stuff is. So yes, there is recycling options, but again, that's not, other than calling for recycling the law, that's not directly relevant to the wording of our law. Okay, so that's the highlights from that. Any other comments anyone wanted to make on the discussion so far? Okay, so at last night's town board meeting, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen. There. So at the town board meeting last night, the town board decided that the rest of the planning board would indeed join the zoning commission in their effort to draft a first look at the question of zoning and first set of zoning plan for the town. And Mark, you can help fill me in, but the wording you said was basically that we were going to finish the battery siting law before fully joining, but that we probably should be paying attention in the meantime so that we're up to speed on the zoning stuff. And I think that would be critical because they're just starting to look at zoning maps. So this to me seems to be a key moment in the zoning commission's, you know, they're really getting going, I guess is what I would say. Anything else you want to add to that, Mark?
No, Catherine put the resolution forward and we both agreed that it made sense to make it contingent upon completing your current work on the battery storage. And that was under my, Catherine had reported at the agenda meeting that you guys were in the final stages of that. So that was our understanding. So I know Catherine wants to follow up on that.
No, sounds great.
Okay. So with that, I think we should proceed with consideration of the draft law. And Will, I know there were various sections in which you want to raise some points. So we will get to those as we step through piece by piece. I did make a few changes to the draft. There's a draft on the website, the same draft I sent you guys last time. And just today, I made a few changes based on our discussion at the last meeting, and I'll point those out as we go through. And then we'll take up wherever it is that we need to start going. So let me go open that document and give you 1 second here.
And Phil, do you have my email where you could send me the latest draft?
Yeah, I don't have your email. And I will. What I'll do is, so Mark, if you could send me Patrick's email, then I will add you to the zoning and so that the planning board, list, and then I will send that out to you tonight.
Perfect.
Okay,
Is all.
I'll get that right to you though.
Great. And let me go to,
I think it might be on the CV. Did I?
okay.
Okay.
Mark, do you have it that you could just print right there so you and Patrick can look at it, or you have it on your screen and Patrick could look at it?
I am going to pop it up, but yeah, sometimes it's nice, of course, to have it in print, but I will screen share it in a minute as soon as I can. There we go. Okay, so let me get this back again. And yeah, see if the screen share works for you, or if you want to print it. Obviously, that's good. So let's go share screen, and this time it is this one.
Is there a printer here?
There's a printer next door. Yeah.
Okay, so how do I make you guys?
For the battery? Yeah, I can print it before you leave tonight.
Okay, sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so let's see, something weird just happened for me. All right, how is that for you guys in terms of seeing it?
Now it's good. That's good.
Okay. All right, so you guys know, so where this came from, there was a model law by NYSERDA for battery energy storage system siting. And so a bunch of the text comes from that. But there was a lot of, in terms of principles, there was a lot of overlap with work we had just done on the siting of solar energy facilities. And there were times when I liked the wording better that we had come up with. So that is stuff that will be in yellow. Here and there are specifics like, is this number going to be 60 dB or is it going to be 45 dB? And I try to highlight numbers like that in magenta. Things I just thought were discussion points, potentially thorny topics, I tried to draw attention to in green. And then I said in bold is things that we probably want to add that I found, that were in the law that I'd read after previously. I now have also put some things in bold that I just added today. And these are some notes we did last time. We're going to ignore these for now. And the first thing, so there's the purpose section, and our discussion last time we had brought up, it only had sort of said that battery energy storage is useful for renewable energy stuff, and that it has a broader use than that. And so I indeed broadened what it says in the purpose section. So what I added was that it has important functions, grid stability, grid congestion, balancing supply and demand. So, because instantaneously, they always have to be in balance. And with batteries, that's really easy to help support. And then indeed, that it supports the integration of, that's supposed to be of renewable energy generation. No, okay. And supporting integration from, this is garbage. Yeah, why didn't that not go away? There we go. Yeah, so it supports integration from intermittent renewable sources such as solar and wind. So I broadened the purpose statement there along the lines of our discussion. And then as we have before, tie it into essentially the comp plan with how we supported renewable energy in the comp plan. And then this is another change because we had talked about, so the wording had seemed to suggest that maybe this only applied to standalone battery energy storage facilities. So we wanted to, catch more than that. But again, there's a supersession by the state in some cases. So what I added based on that is that this local law applies to storage systems, whether they're independent facilities or part of a facility that includes generation. But again, I probably don't have to say this, but I'm acknowledging that there are systems where the local jurisdiction has been superseded, and that's probably spelled wrong, by New York State. And So anyway, again, you know, they will be superseded by the New York State, whether we acknowledge that in the law or not, but I, you know, didn't want to, you know, I just thought it was reasonable to acknowledge the fact that we realize that there are certain systems that the local law cannot apply to. Let's see, and the rest of the stuff is what we had before. We went through definitions. I don't think I changed anything in the definitions, and we will need to go back and make sure there may be some things like agricultural land and other things that aren't relevant to this law that I left in case we wound up making them relevant. But at some point we have to go through and get rid of all the extraneous definitions. Will, did you have anything? I think we went through some stuff in here last time. Do you have any questions on the definition stuff or stuff you want to tighten up or improve? Okay.
There were a couple, but it might be worth mentioning later. And some of them are really picky, like in decommissioning, instead of saying restoring the land, say restoring the site. And there's a few places where it said solar.
Thank you for catching that.
There's a couple places, but they're pretty minor, and I know our time is limited. So if it's okay with folks, I can pick them up if you want me to do the sort of the reading that I did before for the solar law, to do that for the battery law. If you want to go that route again, happy to do that kind of edit again. There is one thing, and this isn't a big deal, but we keep referring to the fire chief from the appropriate fire protection district throughout in a couple places. I think it would be easier to just, I know it's going to sound weird at first, to just create a definition for fire chief. Because otherwise it's a mouthful and it detracts from what you're trying to say. So it would be the fire chief would be the fire chief of the fire protection district in which the battery site is located.
Yeah. Okay. So I
Something
agree.
to that effect.
Right. I agree with that. I'm going to just put, again, quick notes in here for the appropriate district. And yeah, we can add a few more words to that. I think that's a good idea. I think that's an excellent idea. I mean, or it could say
So
fire.
the only other thing that's
One question, potentially that, thoughts, we could call this fire official or something, so that we aren't using fire chief to mean fire chief, somehow different. I don't know. That's just a thought.
yeah, I like doing the definitions at the end, but I realize sometimes it's good to take a shot at it. The only other comment about the definitions that I had is that we had the unified solar permit.
Right.
Did we have a discussion about whether to have a unified battery permit, battery energy storage permit?
We have not yet, though implicit in this is the fact that we would use, they don't call it a unified one, but whatever they call it in the model law, that there's basically a 2 or 3 page form you fill out if you're doing a 600 kilowatt hour or less, or whatever it was. I think that was the number. But yeah, we will have, the law does call for that. I can't remember what we call it though.
Okay, so later we'll need to go back and clean up some language around that. That's all I had from section 4.
Okay, and I do would very much appreciate your close reading of things to catch those sort of little inconsistencies. I'm very happy to turn that over to you. She does such an excellent job on the solar law in that regard. Okay, so anything in section 5? I think we went through section 5 last meeting. And yes, Patrick, you'll be at a disadvantage here because all of this is new to
We
you.
might want to think about whether there would be additional fees. I don't know how you might have handled the what the fire chiefs suggested about the cost of firefighting. If would you handle that as a fee or a charge, or that part, I'm not sure how you would do
Right.
that.
Okay, excellent question. It wouldn't come in here because this is just like fees for the review process. And there may be language in there. I can't remember. I didn't add anything since our discussion with them, but I can't remember if we already had something. And also there'd be a question, but yes, I think there needs to be something in there about recouping costs. And again, what Guy can tell us whether it's going to be legal and enforceable or not. Yes, I did not go through, and I did try to carefully write up in our minutes all the recommendations we got from them. What I haven't had time to do is then go back to the law and make sure we actually had some of those in there. And so we definitely need to do that. And yes, that's one of them. But I don't think it would be in I don't know where we go. Good question. I'm going to back up for a second. Let's
Okay.
see where just for Patrick's benefit. Yeah, okay. So the battery energy storage systems are divided into 2 levels. When we did our solar law, we actually did 3 levels, but the battery is 2 levels. So anything that's 600 kilowatt hours or less, they call tier 1, and basically is just a simple permit form. Anything that is tier 2, which is of course that and larger, or that has like multiple battery technologies, goes through the review process by the review board. And so it's not just a simple permit. So that's when you see language like tier 1 and tier 2 in the law, that's what's going on. Okay, making you guys dizzy while I scroll down. Yeah, I think we got through all of this. Okay, so here we go. Section 6. So tier 1 are exempt. They don't no site plan review, and they here. So we call it a tier 1 permit to the code officer. And then, Will, my guess is you have a lot of stuff in section 7. I will start because I think this is about where we got to last time. So I think I'm going to start here, and Will, as you come to sections, I'm just going to, I don't want to rush things, but now we're going to take more time. So basically, that there's a requirement for site plan review and the application requirements. So this, again, basically, like in our solar law, mimics what the site plan review, it says, basically the requirements are the sketch plan is what the site plan review law calls for the sketch plan. And then this is where we get a bit more detail of, what they do with their preliminary review. Of course, there has to be a seeker form. That's state law anyway. If we ever have a town level thing, there's going to be a TECR form. Like we did in the solar law, that we want to be sure they have legal agreement to use the land. So that's requirement 2. Longer, and this then comes from the NYSERDA model law, is the detailed emergency operations plan, which I think we simply said a plan in the solar law. But again, these facilities are more likely to have issues. And so the NYSERDA law went step by step through what needs to be in the emergency operations plan. And so that's what's here. I don't want to read it all to you guys, but you have to be able to shut it down, de-energize it, what you do for testing it periodically, what happens when there's of course monitoring systems, and when they say there's a fault, what happens, what are the emergency procedures, spell them out. you know, what does it take to put the fire out and what are the materials? If the things are damaged, what happens? What we added, and I think I just worded more here, was not just that there be a plan, but that plan also spell out, okay, so, you know, how do you train the local people and drill them, et cetera, make sure that they are ready for this. And then the general catch-all other procedures.
Can I make
Fire
a
safety, yeah,
small
go ahead.
suggestion for bullet point I, back at the top of the section?
Yes,
Yeah, so I see, sorry, at letter B, where it says any additional materials deemed necessary by the review board.
mhm.
My impression is because since we're being proactive about this law and still might not know what kinds of additional materials would be required, one idea could be that maybe after the first 5 permits of this type that are issued, that the planning board or the review board, I don't know if maybe the town board would have to vote into law, but to review any patterns and additional materials requested by the review board, and if it seems appropriate to make those requirements, just to try to increase a bit of predictability on the permitting and approval side.
Sure, makes eminent sense. Again, I think I'm not going to, doesn't change the wording here, but down the line that might, sure. I think that makes eminent sense. We are, you know, again, solar law is the same way because we really have no idea until they do 1 or 2 or 3 what is they're really going to wind up needing. So I guess that's an excellent idea. But so everyone put that in the back of your head that, okay, you know, if we ever do review several of these, that then I think the law could be revised. I think that's what you're suggesting, Patrick, that, you know, we don't
Patrick, are
revise
you
it now.
saying you think that there's some reason to put it in write it into the law?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Oh,
proposing.
okay. Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Here's
Okay.
some, dynamic zoning work. One idea that I found to be kind of useful in a lot of local government settings is to encourage periodic review of land use laws. So I figured if we could build that into the law, then it'll be predictable that once lessons are learned from the process, those lessons become implemented into the permitting process.
Sure. Will, thoughts?
So one way, one way to consider handling that is to have a list that you can update periodically without having to go through the law again. You know, sort of like what people do with their wills, right? They can incorporate a list into your will, which is a legal document, but you can change that list periodically as long as you date it. And then you don't have to go through a whole process of revising the law again.
I think what,
You know, you might just want to add one thing.
Catherine?
yeah, I think, Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing from Patrick is that by inserting the language such as what he just verbalized into the law, that would obviate what, you know, the need for that, like that it's incorporated as part of the law, which in terms of change of people, I would highly, you know, recommend, right? So let's say, so we're going to say, oh, keep this in mind, but there could be 5 different people 20 years from now. So
Yeah.
I think having it in the law to say.
So, all right. So I don't think it does. I think what again, Patrick can chime in for himself now, but you know, what I'm hearing him say is, you know, basically the review board would learn through practice what it needs, and then it would be useful both for the review board and the possible developers to have that spelled out in the law so they are aware up front, as opposed to there being some, you know, there will still be this catch-all of anything else they need. I think that should always be in there because something might come up. But the more we can spell out, then when a developer comes in, they can make sure they get the review board what they want. And the review board is going to have to learn what they want. So I think we would spell it out in the law at some point once the review board determined what those things were. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Patrick?
Yes, essentially. And I don't know whether that would be, say, requiring an amendment to the law, or like requiring the town to consider an amendment to the law, or building on Will's idea, saying that there's X official list maintained by the town clerk on the town website that is considered the official list of additional materials that the review board thinks is necessary that can be amended periodically or something like that.
I think that would definitely work because, again, the review, I mean, this law would have to go through public hearing, et cetera, voting on by the town board if we're going to make an amendment to it. And things you want to have, certain things want to have that force, right? That goes through that. But this list, it's whatever the review board wants anyway. And so it would be certainly just as reasonable for there to be a list kept by them or the town clerk. You know, it can't be any less than what's called for here, but it can be the things that are in addition to what's called for here. So that idea might well work. To me, I mean, Mark, do you have, you know, I'm gonna let you chime in here since you've seen town laws in action.
That sounds reasonable. I think it sounds reasonable.
Where I'm more puzzled is how to actually say or phrase that as opposed to just telling the review board, keep a list. I mean, does it have to be in the law?
And maybe I can draft some language and send it by mail for inclusion.
I'm happy with that. Everybody else happy with that?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about all right, so that's all the emergency stuff. There needs to be, all right, so again, there is as we discussed last meeting and with the fire chiefs, the New York State has really kept up to date on the fire code in regards to these facilities. What's probably less up to date is the code officers. And so we're asking indeed that, you know, the plan needs to say how they're complying, and that will just make it easier for the code officers to check things, I think. At least and let's see.
Okay,
Yeah, and just
so
like with the solar step. Go ahead, Will.
are we going to talk about the emergency operations?
Sure.
So it talks about an energy storage, battery energy storage management system, notifications about potentially dangerous conditions. And do you remember how the fire chiefs were concerned because you could have the system monitored, but the people monitoring it could be so far away that they wouldn't even be able to send a representative for a day or something like that, that we needed to address how quickly someone would respond and how quickly they'd have someone on site. I think that belongs in the emergency procedures,
Okay. Well,
emergency operations.
yeah, so right. So the question is to put a requirement in that they be able to get some help.
I think we need to remove when provided.
Remove when provided is what you're saying? Well, I think we're losing you. Can you try that? Try speaking again.
Yeah, I think for the large systems, I think we need to require notifications from the energy storage management system, not when provided.
Okay, so
It's
and
in
remind.
C.
You're right, and I see. I'm
Just
looking.
as a start.
Yeah, I've got that highlighted. So remind me. I believe the uniform code requires a monitoring system, or doesn't it? I think we've lost Will temporarily.
They required what's called a supervisory station, and by definition, that's a 24/7 monitoring, but they don't require, they don't have distance requirements. So
Right.
the station could be anywhere.
Agreed. So all this is talking about is the fact that it's monitored. So there would be something in addition, because that is, so I think the when provided is indeed a bit superfluous, because I believe it's required by code. So I'm okay, again, that language came from NYSERDA. I'm not sure why it's there. Because I believe they require it. But you're talking about something different. And it maybe be an additional clause here, which is, how fast the owner / developer needs to provide some help in case of an emergency. So that's different than the management system. It's how fast the management system manages to dispatch aid.
Yes, and it should be on-site help.
So what are you suggesting other than deleting when provided? I think we need to add something. And I don't know if we really can. I don't know the legal authority of the town to do that, but worth trying. If we can take, I will just let me do this. Come on. All right, Will, you with us?
So, the most likely scenario is these batteries would be at a substation, in which case the utility is likely to respond very quickly. But even then, wait for the utilities to respond. But a commercial operation has less stringent requirements for being responsive,
Right. All right. So
in general.
All right. So here's my suggestion. Since what we are talking about is requirements of what the emergency operations plan discusses, the emergency operations plan needs to discuss how soon help is on the way. Basically, how soon personnel will arrive on site, and I'll fix wording later. It's then up to the review board or us. I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know if we can literally require them to be there within 3 hours or something. I mean, I just don't know. That's a Guy Crow question. But we need to know how soon that is. My guess is, based on discussion with the fire chiefs, and this is how I think I worded in the minutes, is that basically the county needs to be ready to do it initially. And that initially might be 1 day. But that there has to be some help from the developer because the county doesn't really have the resources, personnel, or whatever. But it's not really, I think, I wouldn't want to say, oh, they have to be there within an hour, because I agree that might be a pretty big requirement. So I'm not sure how to put this, but we at least have to have them state how soon they're going to arrive on site. Do people feel more strongly that we should put a requirement in the plan that they be there within X hours?
I've said this before, but just to reiterate, I mean, I'm not sure that any of this.
This should really be coordinated
Will-
with the county because.
Let Catherine finish, then you can go, Will. Go ahead, Catherine.
Just uncertainty. I mean, you alluded to this, but I'll just name it that, I don't know that this is within our purview at all to put this in this law, right? It's like there needs to be some emergency management stuff in there. We put that in there. The exact nature of what that looks like in every different community where this is going to happen. I mean, we just don't know. So I guess I would just advocate for, doing our due diligence, but also moving this forward.
And I agree with Will, what you're starting to say, and you can now continue about being a county thing. But again, that's all we can do is write our local law. I think the local law can indeed make them cough up. How soon can you guys get here? That's information we should have, but I don't think we can require a particular time frame. But I'm again willing to learn otherwise. But I'm in agreement with Catherine But what were you going to say a minute ago, Will?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I do think they were pretty clear about the need for coordinated effort, and it may be that we just need to ask for the proper people to follow up so that there's coordination with the county for even including things like, remember, they were saying you need somebody to notify the county immediately so that they have a public relations person so you can keep people away from the site of the fire.
Agreed.
So if that doesn't belong in our laws, we still need to figure that out.
Right, I agree. That's a procedures question. I agree.
How
I
do
think
we
that
do
that doesn't go right. So, well, Mark, we're throwing that on you, but you and Catherine on the town board to follow up on that. But yes, I mean, the county needs to get on this, but we can't require them to. All we can do is, I mean, I don't know if the county has like an emergency operations person, like a coordinator for disasters, like weather disasters, whatever. So they should be talked to and say, hey, this is a potential issue if and when these are located in town. But no, I don't think our local law can make any requirements on there being a coordinated action. It needs to be something the county is, willing to do and should start talking to towns.
Right. And then this, you guys are going to do the law is going to come to the board. We're going to discuss it as board and go from there. But I don't think, yeah.
But agreed, it's a disaster waiting. I mean, again, these don't blow up that often, but it's a disaster waiting to happen. It'd be a big deal, but there isn't even one in the county yet, much less one in the town. And I think what we did suggest in the law is that when the first one is built in any town in Tompkins County, that would be the time that everyone should get trained up on it. All the fire departments, all the code officers, et cetera. But again, that's a county policy thing, not a local law. But I think we can ask them how soon they'll get here. Okay, any other stuff in here you want, Will? Or anybody else? Let me bold this so I go back. All right. Okay. Will, I'm going to rely on your engineering background here. So they gave it a choice in the NYSERDA law, whether it's a 1 or 3 line electrical diagram. And I have certainly seen both discussed in various laws passed in other towns. Even with my physics background, I have no idea of the difference between a 1 or 3 line electrical diagram. Don't know if you do, and have no idea which one of these is more useful for us to ask for. Anybody know what this means?
Yep. You should leave it the way it is. Yep, you should leave it the way it is. The folks who are designing the system will use both types of diagrams depending on what they're trying to depict. So for you want a 1 line for some purposes and a 3 line for other purposes. So I don't think it was meant as a choice. Did they say that? I doubt they said that. What you really want to do is just leave it as an option.
Sure.
They're going to use whatever is the most convenient, and they're going to create whatever is useful.
All right, that's a good suggestion. They did make it a choice in the thing. So the way they used it in the model law, they put things in square brackets when the town was supposed to fill something in. But I think it's fine to leave it like this. I think it's a good plan. I think the developer hopefully will know what will best show what they need to show, and we'll count on their good faith effort there. And at least there'll be something. So that's fine by me. Okay. So this point 8, again, comes lifted from our solar siding law. Jonathan made the point last meeting that, again, the battery energy storage facilities tend to be much smaller, right? It's a very energy dense commodity compared to the diffuse energy of solar. And so they darn well ought to be able to locate outside of a sensitive area, and that we should make that firmer. Because all this says basically trying to shame them into avoiding that, or the review board could then say make some adjustments. Is this wording in 8 here okay, or do we want to say something like, I don't know. Again, without zoning, we probably can't say you can't build in an environmentally sensitive area. So I'm throwing it out there. Thoughts?
Would the review board have the discretion, like, say, to reject?
Wait,
Okay,
wait,
so where do you go for?
Will, maybe you can hear Patrick. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Would the review board have the discretion potentially to say, because of the sole reason of this proposed storage system being in an environmentally sensitive area, we will vote to deny it? Like, would they have the liberty to say, because of this one reason, they would deny it?
Yeah.
Like, what's the strength of the document, I guess?
Right. And so I'm going to help you. So I think the answer is probably no. So the interpretation we got from the town lawyer on a similar set of stuff was basically site plan review is supposed to sort of guide the development, and usually no one requirement can like completely nix a proposal. But if someone's like being really obstinate and isn't like doing anything to amend, then you can sort of say, look, you're not anywhere near in compliance with a bunch of stuff. This one might be, but I don't know if you have one really important one, if that's enough. So to be honest, I don't know for sure the answer to your question, and it may be unanswerable outside of a court case. Site plan review is supposed to be something about how the use uses the site, is situated in the site. And so you'd think you could force them at least to be outside of the environmentally sensitive area. And so that may be good enough. But I guess that's a long-winded, I don't know answer.
Oh, that's fair. And then also
Mark or Catherine, anything to chime in?
Patrick had another comment, I think.
Yeah, sorry, just one more question. What's the relationship between the decision that the review board would be making and the state environmental quality review procedure?
So, right, so the way it works, the review board would be the lead agency in the state environmental quality review. So the review board will make sure that the proposal is in compliance with the state requirements. That's my understanding of it. Mark, correct?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And Will, you were starting to say something earlier. Do you want to tell us what you were?
Let's see, I guess,
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Will, now, yes.
good. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Will.
there's the delay. That's why we keep overlapping. I was just wanting to say, we don't say where to go for best practices. So I think we need some indication. That's what we did on things like lighting. And this is not my.
So yeah, and again, that's my punting because I actually don't know. I mean, so one possibility, I mean, DEC may have some, but I don't know. I'm sort of relying on, yeah, I don't have a source for best practices of mitigating all the different kinds of environmental possible issues. There's no one single source probably. So that's why I worded it this way. Where I knew of one, like the lighting, we put it that it had to conform with those standards.
I think on the state's, on the DEC's website in their seeker section, I think they have for different types of environmental impacts, examples of mitigation strategies. I'll see if I can try to find a link to that.
Thank you. Okay, so are we ready to move on? So I mean, I think, are we okay leaving this like this, or do we want to change any wording in piece 8? think we're gonna move on. All right, there needs to be a commissioning plan, like we're talking, basically something that says it's done, it's up to code, it's up to snuff, it's gonna work the way it's supposed to. So, and there needs to be, how is it taken care of? And then the decommissioning and site restoration plan. Will any other comments or additions or change of the language of any of these things, or it's small details to do when we do wordsmithing?
Okay, so I think it might just be clarification, but talks about a corrective plan of action to be developed for any open or continuing issues that are allowed to be continued after commissioning. And I could see where there are some things that would be minor enough that it's still safe to operate, even though there are items that are open, but it doesn't say who makes that determination. Is
All right.
it the professional engineer?
So, all right, so I missed some of what you said, but I got the gist of it, that there may be tiny things left that allow the facility to go forward without being completely commissioned. Is that what you're saying? And which is, yes, that should be made by an engineer, I would think. I mean, basically, the commissioning is done by a licensed professional engineer. So maybe that would be the person who could say conditional approval. These are the open items that should be done soon, but you're okay to go ahead. Is that what you're suggesting, Will? Okay, if you're talking, I'm not hearing you. All right, Will looks frozen to me. Catherine?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, so something in here in here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Okay, so we'll put something in about conditional approval that, things would have to be resolved, like kind of like your punch list in your house when you finish the house, that kind of thing. You can still get your certificate of occupancy, but the builder's going to come back and fix some things. All right, are we ready to move on to the design guidelines? I mean, basically, then the last step is what the review board does, which is their final site plan review. And basically that's where money comes in, so as we've worded it. So that's where they will have to pay the monitoring fee, which is the ongoing money that's used for the ongoing monitoring of the compliance during construction. And then the security for the eventual decommissioning. And then the last thing we said, yeah, I can't remember where this came from, but that basically we have to have final engineering documents. Seems reasonable. So I feel ready to move on to design guidelines. What do we have in here? Again, Patrick, you haven't had a chance to read all these design guidelines. Will, I assume you have some questions on some of these.
Are you ready?
I think so. Yeah, let's just jump. I think we'll just jump to the ones, and then as Patrick has time to read them as leisure, he can also flag things that he wants us to talk about at the next meeting. We'll see. Let's see how far we can get through today. So go ahead, Will.
Okay, fencing, the last sentence. As required by the Uniform Code, please add, and approved by the code officer, because the security is up to the code officer to make the approval. It's in.
Okay, I have no problem with that. Yeah, and you know, Patrick, you can certainly chime in. We're missing Jonathan, who's the other one who'd be the other official planning board member. Yeah, no, that seems reasonable.
No comment from me right now.
Okay. And Will, are you with us? We keep losing you, unfortunately. See, Mark, with better internet, this meeting would take half the amount of time.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay,
You
All right.
ready for the next one?
ready for the next one.
Okay, noise.
All right, good one. Let's see, okay.
There's 60 dBA from the Model Best was a 60 dBA 1 hour average.
Yeah,
What we have are the 45 dBA equivalents for 8 hours.
Yep.
So I don't know if they match, but I think we're okay with what we had. If it's good enough for solar, it should be good enough for battery, don't you think?
that'd be where that's why I left it at our numbers we had for solar, a bit more stringent than what they had. So I'm happy with that. So you're saying we can go ahead and I'd raise this as a flag. So you think, sure, let's leave it at the 45, 55, 55? Is that what you're saying, Will?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly happy with that. They have,
Sounds good.
we are a quiet rural community.
Okay.
I mean, really, it's going to be
Section
transformers
G,
that cause the noise anyway. I missed what section we're on.
Okay, so section G on vegetation. G.
H is vegetation, G is utilities, which,
Oh, well, now it's probably a different one.
so you want vegetation, okay, yep,
Okay, vegetation.
yep,
The 10 feet is fire code.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm good with 10, are you good with 10?
So,
I'm losing
Yeah.
you. Okay, all right, good, yeah, I think we should make that 10.
as long as the fire chiefs don't have any comments.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is code, I think is appropriate, and it was in the Lansing law that we looked at a long time ago, so yeah, that seems reasonable. Okay, next.
Site access.
Yep. Yes, okay, and I do want to talk about this.
We've heard two different versions. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. I'm with you, because I wanted to modify this, so go ahead, Will.
So we've had two different versions of what would work. One was make sure you have two separate means of access. The other was make a loop and make sure you can turn the trucks around. Personally, I would favor two separate means of access, but I'm not a fire person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and Patrick, for your benefit, this was based on a prior conversation with one of the fire chiefs that, where it was, again, out here, rural area, rural area, if the drive to this place got blocked, then they're trying to cross a cornfield and their trucks are going to bog down. So the question is, in that unlikely scenario that the drive in had something burning fall across and they couldn't get in, we wanted them to have access. But in talking to them in person, they were really raising that the main question is, they get their trucks in there, they're fighting the fire, they got to turn them around to get out again to go get more water or whatever. And they want to make sure that they can do that. And one option was, he said, ideally, and maybe that's how we phrase it in the law, a looped drive, so they can pull in, do their stuff, and then there's a loop around, they can go back out again. I think we need to make sure it's clear that the roadway is kept, and they made this point too, clear all times of year, right? Just because the company can get a van or pickup truck in there in the winter doesn't mean a fire truck can get in, so they have to plow it good enough for that. But I'm tempted to go with the, suitable for the town equipment to get in and turn around, and even say preferably a looped drive. I'm okay with that kind of wording, as opposed to the two means of access, because that conceivably means you got to do two different road cuts. Maybe you're doing that much more road covering that much more ground with impermeable materials. So, I'm happy with the turning around idea, but I guess in this case, Catherine, you really should chime in too, because again, we are missing Jonathan's voice, so you get to add a little more. And
I've been training myself to not speak. I've been doing so well. Come on.
you have been.
No, I think either is fine. I maintain my general thought of let's just not get in the weeds with it, so to speak.
Yes. Okay, what I'm going to do, I think I will add a little note here. I think I want Jonathan to chime in so that we, and Patrick, you can think about this in the meantime. And next meeting, we'll make a final.
I've got two comments actually for I and J. So for site access, at work, we've explored doing subdivisions in the town of Ithaca, for instance, and I know I don't know if it's a fire code or if it's a town law, the maximum distance of the road, if it like dead ends, is 1,000 feet in town of Ithaca. So I don't know if maybe that 1,000 feet is already in regulation somewhere and we don't need to regurgitate it here, but maybe.
I can tell you from my house that is not a law anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe it's just a town of Ithaca thing. So I don't know if maybe that's something in terms of making sure that, I don't know, suppose the battery facility is deep in the woods and a tree blocks the road and conveniently, like just a few weeks before the facility catches fire, for instance. And speaking from experience of getting stuck on a road deep in northern Michigan with a tree blocking it. So I don't know whether maybe we want to have some kind of distance requirement.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Next comment.
Yeah, and the other comment was for screening and visibility. One thing that I mentioned during my interview yesterday for the planning board is that I find that the built structures of rural areas are some of the most fascinating and exciting architectural forms that exist today, in part because of the artistry behind their functionality in a lot of ways, whether they're old or new structures. And I wonder whether a battery energy storage system could be aesthetically pleasing, and that maybe screening shouldn't be the immediate bias toward the system. I imagine some of them can be tremendously ugly, I'm not denying that, but if they're designed in a way or laid out in a way that's visually interesting, I don't see why we couldn't encourage that kind of creativity. But maybe that's definitely it's a review board kind of question, but I don't know. So yeah, how to change the wording there to encourage creativity.
Yes. So right. I mean, in the end, it comes down to the review board, but they have to do what's in the law. So if it says screening and visibility in the law, that's what they're going to be looking towards. I would tend to disagree with you in the part that, this is a rural, community, which means the viewscape is things like fields, farms, silos, wooded hillsides, And however artfully made, I'm not sure that I want to see a battery energy storage building. So I'm, as you know, in terms of, again, in keeping with the comprehensive plan of the,
Should come back. You're frozen, Bill. No.
No.
So while we're waiting for Bill to come back, I'd like to just mention that the most likely form of enclosure for the battery systems will be containers.
Hmm,
That's the industry standard at this point.
I see. So it's not something more artistic. Okay.
It's gone.
Yeah,
In that case, I'm comfortable with screening.
They could have art on them.
Yeah. Vertical planting. I guess that would count as screening, right? No mitigation.
yeah, that would be fine.
I better look to make sure. See Bill coming back in.
I think also for everyone that, at least from residential, the road surface, like I feel like a lot of this is already built into the code, because the road surface and any sort of driveway or access point has to be sufficiently wide and sufficiently like structurally sound to support emergency vehicles. And I remember that was the thing with, you know, our house. So I don't know if that needs to be specifically written in. I doubt, I hope it doesn't, but in terms of the turnaround versus 2 access points versus whatever, I think it's, the language needs to read such that it's, you know, access is sufficient in design and infrastructure or some such thing to allow for emergency, you know, access. But I don't know that we need to delineate the specifics of that.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. And I think it would be really good to be able to leave it to the fire chief, who knows what their equipment requires and what's realistic and easier for them. You know, honestly, if they said loop, I'd go, okay. Or if they said 2 access roads, I'd say, okay, you know.
Right.
I think it's really what they have and what they're willing to work with, but then it gets tricky, right? Because you haven't been specific up front.
so I'm back. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I jostled my internet connection, and unfortunately this laptop, when that happens, I have to totally reboot. So
You're all good. We were just talking about the access to emergency
yes,
kind of things, and that, you know, I was recalling that there was a whole to-do about our driveway, and obviously it's residential, but that there is some delineation about, and in fact, it's like a safety for residential. It's a safety thing where they're like, the driveway has to be sufficient to support emergency vehicles and emergency turnaround, or else you're on your own, so to speak. And you can't really waive your 911. But they won't insure a house that doesn't have that.
interesting.
So I imagine that there's some specific, you know, some commercial version of this where they're not, I don't know, maybe that's the review board, they're not going to get the permit unless, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
whatever the language is, but it's already built in that like they have to have sufficient access.
right. Good, good. So you actually, our house does not have that kind of access, as Mark is aware.
Really?
Yeah, but we were also built, I mean, I don't know, we didn't build all that long ago, but
I mean, there's no way a truck could actually turn around, but like, I think
Yeah.
it's enough that they, you know,
okay. I mean, so back on what we're talking about, the screening and visibility. So, I mean, in the end, it always comes down to what the review board finds acceptable. And so Patrick was, suggesting that, hey, maybe these are, can be attractive buildings. Again, most of them are not. I would definitely say they're very industrial looking. And that's why I think the screening is probably going to be the right solution for Caroline. But we'll at least add the question, allow artful buildings.
If we ever have formula business restrictions, we can apply it to these sites. That would be my
Yeah.
dream.
All right, so at least we'll continue that discussion next time on that. I'm gonna bold that one. When I have another voice or two to add to the conversation, we'll all sleep on it. Okay, and we'll also sleep a bit on this access requirement. And all right, next item from Will. And I'm good. But just a heads up, I'm good to go till about 7:30. Catherine, does that work for you?
Sure.
Okay, Will, you're okay with that?
Yep.
Okay, and hopefully.
Okay, system certification.
Yeah.
Oh,
Only
sorry.
91 degrees in my house right now, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm waiting for my heat pump.
Yeah.
Are you really? Hope so.
So item J, system certification number 5, goes, meeting the system certification requirements with the approval of the fire official.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what you want to add with the approval of fire official? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Is that with the code officer or the fire official? I guess it's fire official.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm cool with that. Any objections to adding that? Okay, I mean, again, the basic requirement came out of NYSERDA's law because, because indeed, there are ways to meet the same equivalent. But I agree with that addition. That sounds great. All right, next one.
7.4B,
Okay.
best practices. Do you want me to look it up, or does Patrick want to volunteer?
Yeah, I can volunteer to try to find if there's anything on the state website or the
Yeah.
NYSERDA website.
I mean, and that's fine. Again, and I'm happy to if we do that and we have something regional. But again, the bottom line always, this may evolve 10 years from now or whatever. So whatever it is, it should be industry best practices. Now, and I am always a little nervous about that because that's sort of like, oh, be on your best behavior sort of stuff, right? On the other hand, if they don't, and they definitely do something that is not generally considered industry best practices, then I assume that they're going to be at liable or fault or something. So I don't know. But yeah, if we can appeal to a certain set of standards, great.
Okay. Section 7.5,
Okay, 1 second.
signed commissioning oh, sorry.
No, I just want to get that in. So, okay, yep. Which one?
Item A, signed commissioning report to the town. We really should say, who do you give it to?
Okay.
Don't you think?
That'd be the clerk.
Yeah, it should be the town clerk or the code officer, either one.
Yeah.
Mark, do you care if it's a town clerk or the code officer?
I just think the clerk makes sense as she could be the conduit to the code office, so that's what I would do.
All right. Okay.
Next item B, in an approved location. approved by who?
Good question.
Local fire code official?
Replacing approved.
Approved by the fire
Yeah.
chief?
I mean, it could be approved by the review board, but maybe the fire official in a oh, I'm now in a weird cam. Okay. Okay, Sean, sorry, I'm trying to type too fast. Approved by the fire official. Something like that. I will look. That seems something like that. Okay, folks.
Yep.
Okay. Next one, Will.
Okay. Permittee shall notify the code officer. Item C.
Mhm.
Why did we put that in there? Because I read that and I'm going, and then what happens
Yeah.
if there has been no production for 6 months?
I think that's probably, we should check under abandonment. We may have changed the period, but I think it was because, well, let's look at what we did on decommissioning, because it might be, yeah, good question. I think it had to do with making sure the town knew, but it may be less important here. And it may have been that if the clock was going to tick on decommissioning, because they hadn't been producing, we need to know when the clock was going to start ticking. But I don't think we gave them 6 months only for until decommissioning happens. All right. I will, let's all concentrate on that one, see if there was a good reason we had put that in. I think that's what we put in the solar law. It's where it comes from.
Mhm.
And I will, so everyone think and see if they can remember why we had that.
Okay, there should also be in the operations requirement, a logging requirement for inspections, and the log should be made available to the town code officer or the fire chief,
Who's
town fire official.
inspections? Are you saying that their
They're
inspections?
supposed to, yeah, in their operations plans, they're supposed to check things like noise and
Yeah, well, yeah, we have that down.
periodically.
Yeah. So we did have the fact that they're supposed to check noise and light levels periodically. So are those the inspections you're talking about? Or are you talking about other inspections they're doing of the facility?
Yeah, it would be part of their operations plan.
Got it. I'm just asking if the inspections you're referring to are the inspections of noise and light levels, or if you are also suggesting that it might be a log that they keep of their maintenance that the town would have access to.
All of the above. I guess, I'm
Can we?
sorry, I guess I should have gone back through and figured out which ones. But I think the log would go under operations.
No, I agree. I just don't know, again, the legal ground of how intrusive the town could be in checking their maintenance, for example. I like the idea. I just don't know. Catherine, Mark, or Patrick, you guys have any insight
okay.
on that question? I could be, I have no idea. Based on other experiences you guys have had, can the town say, if there's a business operating in the town that's a dangerous business, that we have a right to see maintenance manuals or maintenance records?
We currently have no zoning, so. I mean,
Well, that's different than a zoning question. It's just, you know, a public safety question.
about the public safety, I mean, we could have a
Oh, okay.
agricultural, you know, I think it's very subjective. I don't. Mark, do you know if there's something on the books? There's nothing that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that we could do that, but I would need to investigate more.
On the other hand, it's, you know, we have asked them, you know, to monitor these periodically. So it seems to me we probably could ask them to make a log of those, because those are things that clearly, you know, they move off site, right? Noise and light. And so
Yeah,
somehow I feel more comfortable saying that they have to keep a log of those and that we get to see it.
Yeah, the closest thing that comes to mind is like at gas stations on gas pumps, when there's like a state agricultural department, like this machine was checked on X date to make sure that when you pump 1 ounce of gasoline, it's actually 1 ounce. So I think, yeah, keeping a simple log of like noise and light levels and when they were measured kind of fulfills the same spirit.
So, you know, they can make it available to the code officer, you know. I'll fix the on request or something like that.
Okay,
But
I-
is it
so
the,
I found it, procedures. Sorry. Procedures for inspection and testing of associated alarms, interlocks, and controls are required in the emergency operations plan. So even though it's not, so it's an ongoing thing. There should be a log, but
Okay, so that was
the
up. Right,
log would be part of what they're doing. See what I'm saying?
okay, so I got it. So yeah, so that was in the emergency operations plan, which again, we took from NYSERDA, so they must think it's okay to do. But the suggestion would be that potentially to, you know, log of the interlock, et cetera.
Inspections and testing
Of,
of
okay, so,
controls.
okay, so this I think is, you know, maybe it's a guy question, you know, so they are supposed to do that as part of their emergency operations plan, is supposed to specify what they're gonna do. Whether the town then can see the log, et cetera, I don't know the answer. Log of,
I guess there's also the question of how long the log should be retained and when it can be discarded.
yeah,
I think
Okay.
that could be in their plan.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
right, okay, so I'll just make a note to myself, plan should specify that. What I'm gonna do, Mark, with your permission, I'm gonna formulate a few questions to ask Guy, like this, like, can we do this or that? Is that okay, Mark?
yep, that's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna, on this one, and I think there were a couple other things.
And who's the guy?
Oh, Guy Crow's your attorney.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Good question.
So getting to know everybody.
Yeah, well, it's understandable. All right, so yeah, good point, Will, and we'll just see what we have ability to do. Next.
Okay, section 8. Anybody, is everybody ready for section 8?
Oh, I don't know, I'll try. Yeah, let's go on.
Okay, so remember how we were saying at the beginning of the meeting that in the fire code, they require decommissioning and recommissioning if you have damage. And so I think we need language in 8.1 to cover decommissioning of damaged equipment.
All right, do you have wording on that available now?
See,
or-
so if you have an event, but you only lose some,
Yeah, so that's your, okay, so. I'm just debating whether I want you to like sort of send me something or if I'm gonna type it as you speak it. You have final language in front of you? Will, you have something written out already? It's okay if you don't, I'll just,
no, but
okay, so we're
no,
gonna,
I'm sorry, I don't.
okay, that's fine. We're gonna add something. I'm gonna have you send me words for that though. Add something about if partial, failure or something, if you have a set of batteries and not the whole facility. And therefore, and a recommissioning.
Okay,
A recommissioning, so it has, right, basically, if there's a partial failure, that there's a recommissioning procedure. Is that part of, am I getting at the essence of it?
yes,
Okay. Sure, I'm happy to add something there personally.
I have a question and
Yes.
idea, kind of arising from seeing the draft laws requirement for plans. I'm wondering, and this comes a bit from my experience also with applying for public grants and sometimes not having access to previous plans that received awards or permit approvals, whether if it's not something that's like sensitive information that would be maybe a danger to the security of the facility, if maybe previously approved plans that are required by our local law. I don't know if maybe, if needed, if applicants would have to sign some kind of confidentiality agreement or something just to make it a bit more direct than the freedom of information request, so that there's kind of consistency and the precedent is easy for potential applicants to use and maybe replicate.
So I think what I'm hearing that maybe an applicant would want to see a decommissioning plan that's been approved. And then that would make it easier for them to tailor one that is also going to get approved. Is that what am I hearing you right? Yeah, good question. I don't know, because I don't know how proprietary that would be, or all the work that went in by maybe some engineer to figure stuff out. I don't know the answer. Anybody else have thoughts?
I'm guessing it might be tricky, and that's probably a guy question.
I mean, because Patrick, are you suggesting that there be language in the law that would not just allow, but sort of urge or encourage or whatever, say that these plans would be a matter of public record or something, appropriately redacted? I mean, so where's the relevance to this law come in?
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of making it so that the law doesn't, I'm trying to avoid duplicating efforts if good precedent has been approved and established by the town before, while also recognizing I don't have a background in engineering, so I really don't know like the degree to which this is like extraordinarily site specific, or whether there are maybe broader principles about, for instance, a decommissioning plan that maybe 5 different battery energy storage systems could use just based off of one that was approved. So
Yeah. So here's what I'll say is, again, we're a little town. Our review board is folks who may or may not have an engineering background themselves. In essence, it is the applicant that's going to come up with the decommissioning plan. The applicant will have hired an engineer to do that. And we as a town have the discretion to hire an expert to evaluate that plan. and that cost is borne by the applicant. Because we don't have the expertise to review it.
Yeah.
With all that, I think that probably it wouldn't be appropriate to ask them to then make that public so somebody else can just crib their notes and do it, but I don't know the answer. So maybe we will ask Guy about.
Good point, though. Yeah, it's just throwing the idea out there.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to entertain the idea, but. Okay, so. Okay, maybe I will query him on that, but that may be a, I don't know, and I wouldn't want to discourage someone from applying to put a facility in the town just because they think that all their hard work's going to be made available to everybody. So that might just be a dicey way to go. So, hey, something to think about. All right, Will, we're back to the next thing you might have. Okay, you're muted, Will. I don't know if you're talking to us or not, but you're muted right now.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Item I, a listing of contingencies for removing an intact operational energy storage system from service. Okay, here's where I got a little mixed up about this. If they want to remove equipment from service, say because they're not making money, or there's some change in the law, the regulations, or they just are changing electric power system operations, they're not gonna, do they need to say that in advance for decommissioning? Like, I don't really get what contingencies means here. I guess that's really what it comes down to.
I think that's an excellent question. Again, this is something that I let flow in from the model law, and indeed, I see where they're like, you know, hey, under what conditions would you guys take a fully functional system and decide you need to like remove it from service? That's what this question is asking. And I agree. Why? Why are you asking that question? Why? What right do we have? I mean, if you want to stop because it's not making enough money, you're allowed to do that. So it's a good question. They clearly are getting at that the town or local jurisdiction should, you know, have a heads up on the various reasons why it might be removed from service. And frankly, I have a hard time understanding why the town has a justification for knowing that. But I will take comments from everybody else.
Is that what the 6 months was related to? Somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, let's see, I think, let me make the zoom on here, because there's something where we do say a time frame, and maybe it wasn't, maybe we took it out because it was in, but there was like, if you're out of operation for a year or so, I am not seeing it. I'll have to read through more carefully. So I think that at one point, and again, this was sometimes coming through from Lansing's law and the solar stuff, is like, if you're out of operation for a year, you have to decommission, which we got rid of because we thought that was a little extreme. But we wanted to know if they're going to be out of service for a while. And I'm not sure why. I think if we decide that if they've been not operational for a period of time and need to recommission before starting up again, then we deserve to know if they're out of commission for a while, because we have to know whether to pay attention to the clock ticking. But if we don't have any other timetable in here of, oh, you've been out of business for 9 months, now you got to recommission, then that 6-month thing doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I guess I don't know the answer. On I specifically, it says that we want a listing. If we're moving it. Yeah, I think the latter part is a decommissioning event, has been damaged. Basically, I think that the second half is getting at how bad does this damage have to be before you're going to decommission? That's what I think it's saying. Other thoughts? Make sure you just remove the first part or remove the whole thing. I guess I want to think through a little bit because and maybe you've talked to some battery people or communicated with some battery people at NYSERDA, haven't you, Will?
Yes.
Would this be something you could send them a question of why did you guys put this in your model law? What's the purpose? What's it getting at? Would that be a reasonable thing to do?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, great.
I'd be happy to.
That would be excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering whether, for instance, in the case of fire, if the contingencies are of potential soil or groundwater contamination. But yeah, like you said, the purpose doesn't feel very clear with the wording now.
Yes. Okay. What else you got?
Okay, so you know how you have in here to allow expansion of the system? You need to cover the increase in decommissioning costs. But we could just pick that up on the 3-year review.
Right. Do they expand 1 year and a year later decommission, and we wouldn't have caught that? Yeah, I think it's probably reasonable to add a requirement in the appropriate place to say that, yeah, and maybe just if the expansion is substantial, that should trigger an immediate review of the decommissioning security. And let's see, so.
It's back in 5.4.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be here potentially, but no, okay, so if we go back to 5.4, again, sorry about the zoomies. There we go. Okay, so yeah, again, okay. And again, we only tied it to area increase. But that's because our concern is land impact. And so then we would add expansion triggers review of security amounts. I think there's no reason not to have that. To me, that seems quite reasonable. Anybody else object?
No, Oh. That's all I got. That's all,
Wow,
that's it.
we got through the whole list. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah, yes.
Now, again, as always, Will, thank you for your
Right.
careful reading and looks at things. Okay, great. So we have some homework. Patrick and Will both have taken a couple things on. Great. And I will read through again too, because again, some of it I was hazy on. And some of those questions we will definitely tackle again next time, because I'd like Jonathan's voice on them. And then Patrick will be up to speed on them. And so then they'll have at least, the four of us voting people. So we will take up this law. I think we can get through it next time. So I'll do a little bit more wordsmithing on it. And well, I think it usually works better to get all the basic points in, and then you can go through with one last final pass, and you and I can handle those changes. None of those are like content changes, just like we're making sure everything's consistent. So I don't think you have to do that before the next meeting. Let's just focus on those things that we talked about between now and the next meeting. Anything that's, and I will send this out with my boldings in it, and then I'll work on it, but you'll all have this copy that we just modified tonight. And gather a little more information. And I think then in one more meeting, I think we can be done with it.
That's great. Hey, Bill, are you able to just send that
Okay,
out?
question.
Okay, wait, let me hear from Mark first, then you will. Yeah, what, Mark?
Could you send that to me right now? Because I was going to print a copy for Patrick here at the town
Sure.
hall.
Yeah. Let me save it. And I can print, I can do it in a couple minutes. I'm gonna hear what Will has to say first, and then I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, Will, what were you gonna say?
How about if we try to send you our words, our little homework words before the meeting so they can get incorporated, like maybe we could shoot for 2 or 3 weeks from now, rather than introducing them at the meeting.
I love that idea. Sure. Yeah, no, I think that's the right way to go. And I'm trying to pull up a calendar here. So, all right, so we have our next meeting, and which will be, I think, like our final meeting as a planning board, would be the second Thursday in August. Where is, I don't know, there we go. So that would probably be like 1, 2, that would be the 12th of August nominally. Yeah, and that would be about 4 weeks from now, I think. So that would be, so if I had stuff like 3 weeks ahead, 2 or 3 weeks from now, then on that weekend before the meeting, I could incorporate and make sure I send out over that weekend, so you guys would have, Monday through Thursday to look at it. That seem okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. And the sooner the better, no worries.
So shoot for August 5th.
Yeah, anywhere in that, let's see. Yeah, that would be great. So I have it by the weekend. So anytime in that week, but yeah, by the 5th or 6th of August would be great. And then I'll make sure I get something in your guys' hands by the 9th of August, and we'll meet on the 12th of August. And if I get done, if I get it done Saturday or Sunday, that's when I'll do it. And I'll send it to you guys then. Okay.
Okay, so I have a question, not about the battery sighting law, but a different
Okay.
question
All right.
for you
All
when
right.
you're ready.
I think I'm ready. Actually, let me just do, yeah. So
Hey.
I'm gonna launch, just give me 1 second here to launch something on my computer so that I can help Mark out more quickly. Where is this? Okay, and run that. Okay, go ahead, Will.
Okay, so I created a new folder on the docs site for the telecommunications sighting strategy.
Okay,
Am I still working on that?
I think, well, so that's a good question.
Okay,
So,
and I put,
Go ahead, Will.
Two documents out there.
Okay. Good, I'll look at them.
So one document is the New York, yeah, the one is New York State specific, but it's 20 years old. The other is Tennessee specific, but it's less than a month old.
Okay,
Very well written
okay, great. So yeah. I
and
mean,
shorter than the New York State one.
So basically, we're shifting to be working on the zoning stuff to the extent that any of those things we talked about are relevant to zoning, that might be ongoing work. So for example, you know, parts of that seem relevant to the zoning work, you could certainly be tasked with continuing on. Similar with the critical environmental areas that we had taken up. On the other hand, it might be that has to wait the 9 months or 6 months or 8 months or whatever it takes to finish the zoning plan. So I leave that open. I'm glad you got that stuff and I will definitely take a look at it. But I think since we're going to stop meeting as a planning board, then those projects will fit in as they seem to fit in best with the zoning effort. And then we'll take those up again for sure if that doesn't happen during the zoning time after zoning. That's how I see it. Mark and Catherine, and from the town board's side, how would you want to see things move forward?
Yeah, I agree with that, Bill. Catherine?
Yep, no, I agree with that.
Okay, so thank you for getting a start on it, Will. And it might be that then it sits there for 9 months, but we got to start.
And I have a question about zoning commission as well. Even though I heard that's supposed to be kind of like after the battery law, would we still be allowed to participate in the next zoning commission meetings?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I think it's, yeah, I think that's recommended, at least attendance is recommended. And I'll have to see how well I can do, because then, you know, but yes, I think it's a great idea.
That's a good question, though, because by the wording of the resolution last night, you would go to the zoning commission upon completion of the battery storage law. So that's actually a good question.
And maybe discuss with Jean, at the very least, we should attend, probably, if we can. And how much participation she allows, you know.
I would approach it that way, exactly.
Right.
Delicately.
I mean, the only, excuse me, other thought that I have about the zoning, you know, like the planning board work is that, you know, maybe a review of the task force document would also be helpful, because while the zoning commission is specific, obviously, to zoning, you all have expertise in some of the other land use, you know, regulation strategies. And I feel like, you know, particularly with the telecommunications, that might be, I would love to have people who know about this have an eye on what's going on with the zoning commission in terms of like integration of the other initiatives that are potentially going on, right? I mean, like in terms of siting of telecommunications, you know, project, for example, like what does that really mean? If we have a formula business, for example, what are the you know, that is outside of the current, you know, site plan review design guidelines? Like there's just, I'm hopeful for some integration, I guess, of, you know, the nuance of this. And I see you all as the people who know the most about that.
Okay, I think we may have lost Will, but yeah, and she's definitely going to be our telecommunications.
Here.
There we are. Okay, great. Yeah, and definitely, Catherine, I can bring the concerns about the form of businesses, because, you know, we went through that a lot, right? On our
And zoning, I mean, just to reiterate, like saying where stuff goes does not say a single thing about what they look like.
right. Well, that's where site plan review comes in.
Right.
So we do need to get that site plan review law passed or incorporated into zoning. Yeah.
Your planning board eagle eyes and ears on all these things, I guess, is my, like my.
Well, and hush, hush, Catherine. So I can be your conduit. So if you see things going on, you're concerned about it not being paid attention to, let me know, and I will. I'll make sure I take a look at it.
I mean, that is, all of this is part of the reason that it's part of the zoning commission chart. It's all in there, so. Anyway,
Okay.
Well, just so you know,
we gotta-
I started talking to the Department of Emergency Response people because they had a sighting strategy. So we know how it ended up, but I'm just wondering what their strategy was. So I've been talking to some of them and they seem willing to talk to me. And so I'm going to, continue that if that's okay. I don't see a reason
Sure.
not to.
I mean,
Plus
as I say,
IEEE stuff.
I mean, you are certainly welcome to keep working on it. In terms of, I just wanted to give you an unrealistic expectation of how, I mean, if we were functioning as a planning board, I could guarantee you this becomes one of the main things we work on. Since we're shifting to working with the zoning commission, I cannot make you that same promise or guarantee. But if you have energy, effort, et cetera, you want to pour into that, that's great. Because even if it's not used in the next few months, it will be used somewhere down the line. And that's great. So awesome. Thank you very much for working on stuff. Okay, I think I'm going to close the meeting, adjourn the meeting. That everyone fine?
Great.
Okay,
You all.
nice meeting you.
Yeah,
And everyone get out there and yeah, try to cool off a little bit. So
great. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening.
have a good night. Mark, I'm going to mail you in just about 1 or 2 minutes. I'll mail you that document.
Okay, thanks, Bill.